Hi, I'm Keenan. This is No Octothorpe. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is the best game I have ever played. I love it so much that I have literally trashed and rewritten this script more than a dozen times because I couldn't find the words to accurately convey its monolithic stature in the pantheon of every game I have experienced. But here I am, desperately trying to do it justice anyway. Developed by From Software and published by Activision, it was released on March 22nd, 2019, which happens to be the day after I turned 33 years old. I purchased it for the PlayStation 4 Pro on launch day as a belated birthday treat to myself, and if you'll allow me to indulge in a brief moment of cliché, it is the gift that keeps on giving. I assure you that I am not being hyperbolic when I say that to date, there has not been a single week where I haven't either played Sekiro or thought about Sekiro. For context, it's been over 140 weeks since its release as of this video's publication. That's more than 2.5 years of weeks. I even went so far as to purchase this game a second time after acquiring an Xbox Series X, because I learned that it ran at a consistent 60 frames per second, the bare minimum frame rate that a game needs to achieve for it to be described by some as buttery. While I seldom partake in culinary aphorisms to describe video games myself, I cannot deny for a second that the prospect of a buttery Sekiro was so enticing that I paid full price for this game twice just so I could experience it again in what I would describe as its definitive form. So across 2 platforms, I have accumulated over 180 hours of playtime, resulting in at least 17 full playthroughs of the game, even going so far as to achieve a platinum trophy on the PlayStation 4 version. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to some of you, but spoiler alert, I really don't give a shit about achievements. Most trophies I procure out of mere happenstance as I play, and the vast majority of the time, my interest in a game naturally wanes long before reaching 100% completion. So believe me when I tell you that my love for Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is unnatural. My insatiable lust for this game ensured that I achieved 100% completion by the mere fact that all I wanted to do after finishing Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice was to play more Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. I have been playing video games for 34 years of my life, and I can count on one hand the number of titles that have elicited this type of response. For me, video games are usually more flash in the pan, one and done sordid affairs, if I even bother to finish them in the first place. I hope that doesn't sound like I don't love and appreciate games or somehow lack profound attachment to many titles. That's absolutely not the case. I only mean to illustrate that, especially for single-player focused experiences, it is highly unusual for me to become obsessed. Most games have to compete with both my recency bias and my notable distaste for nostalgia. When that new and shiny game comes along, I don't think twice about abandoning whatever I was playing to jump on that sweet, novelty-infused serotonin drip. So not only do I not finish many games, it's even rarer for me to go back and replay them. This is not the case with Sekiro. It is not at all uncommon for me to finish one playthrough of this game, only to immediately start up a new playthrough right after skipping the credits. Hell, I did it twice just while producing this video. A weird realization I've come to upon writing that last line: the only other games I can even think of playing through to completion more than 3 times are Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, which are also From Software titles. This begs the question, what nefarious celestial deity has From Software entered into a dark pact with to imbue themselves with the power of conjuring experiences so deliciously compelling that they beckon me to replay their games ad infinitum until my interest inevitably turns to the next From Software release? Anyway, Sekiro is the best game I've ever played because it is the purest distillation of its Soulsborne lineage dating back to 2009's Demon's Souls. While 2015's Bloodborne strayed from the path a little bit with its faster, more aggressive combat, it still very much had its roots firmly planted in its predecessor's garden. Sekiro, on the other hand, is in a completely different yard. It streamlines so many gameplay mechanics to create a seamless, focused experience. eschewing things like the character creator, or robust RPG elements, or even the stamina bar, the obliteration of which allows you to dash around the world unencumbered for as long as your little heart desires, or until you accidentally yeet yourself off of a cliff. This stands in stark contrast to games like Dark Souls, which, by comparison, feel as though your character is constantly trudging through a non-Newtonian fluid. From's focus on fast, frenetic action in Sekiro begins by stripping away the foundations of their previous game's designs. It is, in the loosest of terms, a traditional Soulsborne game, but it shares very little with their previous titles in terms of core mechanical experience. In my mind, that's all for the better, because the result is that Sekiro is the best feeling game I have ever played. No other video game presents more satisfying moment-to-moment gameplay. The superb movement provides a level of freedom and fluidity typically reserved for games designed specifically around freedom and fluidity. I already mentioned the dash, but From, in their great benevolence, also decided to bestow us with a frickin' grappling hook. Yeah, this game is amazing. 1 second you're sprinting on the ground, and the next you're basically the newest member of Cirque du Soleil, whipping yourself through the air like feudal Japanese Spider-Man. This enables a wonderful verticality to the level design, as well as opening up opportunities for exploration From's previous games could only dream of. Long gone is traipsing through spooky cottages, looking through every nook and cranny for a pebble or something. In Sekiro, the nooks are rooftops, the crannies nestled in cliffsides. All it takes is a quick whip of your grappling hook to send you flying across a ravine, like a flying squirrel with a grappling hook. Shit, I didn't even mention your character can jump. There's a dedicated jump button. That's cool. I tried jumping in fucking Dark Souls. It's barely a mechanic.
Wow.
Don't get me wrong. I love Bloodborne and Dark Souls, but there's always been an inherent delay in how characters control that feels a little sluggish. If you hold the sprint button, it takes a second before your character begins sprinting. Pressing the attack button almost always results in a delayed wind-up animation before the actual strike. Even rolling around feels like your character is weighed down by kettlebells. And then there's Sekiro, with a level of polish and precision in its controls that completely sets it apart from its brethren. Each button press is responsive and serves to help you maintain momentum. Sekiro is all about thrusting yourself into action. The result is the ability to easily fall into a flow state that empowers you with the dexterity required to successfully engage in a chaotic death waltz. I love Sekiro because it's a rhythm game disguised as an action-adventure game. But instead of playing as some disembodied entity swinging laser swords at floating boxes, you embody a ninja with an actual sword and a thirst for revenge. The beat is a fast, pulsing rhythm punctuated by the metallic clang of sharpened steel striking sharpened steel. It's a ballet of brutality. Every slash, thrust, dodge, parry, and jump is but a mere step in an impeccably choreographed dance, but with a promenade that results in a showering of viscera. Cool! In any good rhythm game, the conditions for victory must be clearly telegraphed to the player so they become immersed in the intrinsic rhythm of the game. Timing, of course, is everything. For example, in the previously shown Beat Saber, boxes appear a good distance in front of you and indicate which direction you need to slash your laser sword in sync with the pulsing beat of the music in order to destroy them. Sekiro isn't that much different. Here, each unique enemy comes with an assortment of maybe half a dozen or so attacks they can perform that you then counter with appropriately timed parries in order to fill their posture meter, eventually enabling you to execute a killing blow. And luckily, each of those attacks is clearly articulated through their body language prior to following through on their threat. It is never impossible to predict what step in the dance your opponent is about to make. It merely takes time and a lot of patience to be able to read their intentions and press the right buttons at the right time to avert the damage they would otherwise inflict. The enemies strike fast, they hit hard, and at times the flurry of attacks directed at you feels overwhelming, insurmountable even. But there is always a way to counter them. You just need to learn the steps of the dance and execute accordingly. Misreading your partner's cues, hesitating to respond properly to them, or deliberately trying to force the dance in one particular direction will almost assuredly result in failure. This is where the discussion of difficulty comes into play. Much has been said about the level of purposeful challenge in From Software's games, but it's worth noting that Sekiro's level of challenge is particularly punishing, especially for new players. Bosses in Sekiro will capitalize on your hesitancy in an instant, straight up murdering your ass in a hit or two. Even lesser foes are capable of immense amounts of damage, so at no point after you engage an enemy should you assume victory until they lay slain on the ground. There's almost no enemy in this game that doesn't require some level of thought or strategy or aptitude to dispatch effectively. Except, like, maybe these fucking geckos. But even they can barf up poison all over you. It's annoying. It's an unforgiving experience, to say the least. And I understand why many people don't mesh well with the From Software formula. Their games are built on loops predicated by the fact that you will fail. You will die. I mean, the game is called Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. If you play Sekiro, you will die so many times, so many more times than twice. It can be exhausting. Many fans of From Software games will be familiar with the simple refrain that some regurgitate when others ask for guidance in overcoming a particular challenge: get good. A remarkably pithy response that implies that a player's repeated failure is due solely to their lack of skill, and the only answer is for them to get good. Getting good becomes almost the exclusive reason some play From Software games in the first place. To get good is to wear a badge of honor that few are able to obtain, which, of course, needs to be wielded in a display of superiority over those lesser people who, for what is surely due to their own shortcomings, good cannot be got. For the longest time, I played From Software games because I wanted to experience the unique joy in getting good, to see definitive proof of my own success. Every time I overcame a challenging fight with an enemy, I recognized that I had learned, I had grown, I got good, even if it was only momentary. Sekiro was no different. I eagerly threw myself into the masochistic loop, thirsted over the thrill of overcoming a brutal bout, going toe-to-toe with man and beast and monsters, taking time to learn the deliberate beats and steps, and I lusted over the notion that I could do it flawlessly. And I died. And I died, and I died, over and over and over. I engorged myself on failure. I immersed myself in rage. I befriended disappointment. To play Sekiro was to confront the specter of my innate failings as a person, an existential quandary that haunts my waking moments. When a game punishes me for even the smallest misstep, and the definitive advice from others is to get good, how could I not see my failure in the game as a manifestation of my flaws outside of it? Clearly, the goal is to be perfect. Clearly, my failures indicated I was not. If I'm not perfect, how could I possibly succeed? I love Sekiro because it caused me to interrogate my unhealthy relationship with perfectionism. I said in the introduction of this video that I've rewritten this script a dozen times. That wasn't a gag. If anything, it's a conservative estimate. At this moment, I want nothing more than to get this right, because this game means so much to me. It's especially frustrating because I started this whole YouTube endeavor with the challenge to myself that I wouldn't get hung up on making something good, but would rather focus on creating for creating's sake. To do it because I was excited and passionate and wanted an excuse to reflect on my favorite things and earnestly share my thoughts with the world. I can't tell you how many projects I've started over the years, my perfectionism looming in the background, and I think, this is it. I can outrun it. I'm free. I was so sure that this time would be different. It took all of 2 weeks before I fell back into my old habits of tearing everything to the ground because of a small perceived failing in my ability to accurately portray my love for this game. I convinced myself, albeit temporarily, to abandon the script. Just give it up. Even after 3.5 decades on this earth, I default to putting life on hold because I'm worried about all the ways in which things might not work out. Why do anything if I can't do it right? Right? Some time ago, my wife and I were discussing perfectionism, specifically my perfectionism, and how I felt like a prisoner to it. I was so frustrated with feeling paralyzed. In her boundless wisdom, my wife used video games as a framing device for a simple question.
What's the difference between these games and real life?
Her point being that I never balk at a challenge when it comes to games. Despite knowing a game like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Sekiro would be an exercise in frustration, I always approached them with fearlessness. I knew the experience would be difficult and often unpleasant. I knew I'd get annoyed with myself. I knew I wouldn't be good at the outset, but I would play them anyway, because I knew I would eventually figure it out. I would find joy in the journey. Why was that so easy for me to see when playing a video game? And why was it so difficult to see in almost every other aspect of my life? Needless to say, highlighting my hypocrisy shifted my perspective, and I was able to recognize that my adoration for Sekiro wasn't because of the controls, or the movement, or the combat, or the incredible polish, or how pleasurable all of those mechanics working in tandem are. And trust me, they're all very pleasurable. I've thought about this game every week for over 2.5 years. I've sunk nearly 200 hours of my life into it. I'm so adept at this point that I essentially run on autopilot when I play, and I love every minute of it. But I'm never perfect at it. I still make mistakes. I still die. I still skip entire areas because of that one boss I can't fucking stand. And yet, I still beat the game. The credits still roll. Every single time. Sekiro is the purest distillation of its Soulsborne lineage dating back to 2009's Demon's Souls. For a decade, From Software refined their mechanics to create a game that is built on the idea of forward momentum. The game is laden with items, mechanics, and technical affordances that relieve you of the relentless punishment and help you progress. If an enemy is giving you trouble, throw a firecracker at them to temporarily blind them and get a few easy hits. If you can't deplete both of a mini-boss's health bubbles through direct combat, you can probably sneak up on them and stab them in the kidney to take one out and give yourself a leg up. If you can't nail the timing of a parry, just tap the block button repeatedly as they strike and you're bound to find some forgiveness. Hell, if you die, you can just resurrect yourself and get another chance to enact violent revenge on the thing that just killed you. It's called Sekiro Shadows Die Twice for a reason. The game wants you to win, even if that means defying the laws of our corporeal beings. Assistance is baked into the core design of the game. Look, there's no denying the inherent challenge embedded in the experience of Sekiro, but the game gives you tools every step of the way to meet and overcome that challenge, and it teaches you that you do whatever you can to finish, even if you just manage to scrape by. You can choose to use the mechanics they provided to make the game less challenging, or you can even choose to make it more challenging. Ultimately, it's up to you, the player, to determine how much punishment you want to endure. But it doesn't keep score of how many times you fail. It doesn't fault you for not meeting expectations. There's no achievement for perfection. It just says, do the thing, even if it's not good. Do the thing because doing the thing will inevitably make you better. Do the thing because just doing the thing is enough. It turns out that the reason I love Sekiro so much is because it was trying to tell me from the moment I started playing it that it's okay to do something poorly. Improvement is inevitable through practice, and completion does not equate to perfection. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is the best game I've ever played because it taught me that the goal isn't to get good, but get good enough. Play for the joy of playing. Create for the joy of creating. Be okay with being enough. You're enough. Thanks for watching. Yep, that's the one.